When one is self-aware, one is living in consciousness of their thoughts and feelings, and more importantly, their actions. Being self-aware is living in a state of being that is always engaged and reflective. More often than not, people just live robotically, doing what they do every day at certain times of the day repetitively, and not asking themselves any questions. To them, it's their normality, and if asked, they will say, "What is there to question? I do what must be done and what I know to do in whatever role I'm playing or subjecting myself to." People will react accordingly as they normally do, and also get triggered by almost the same type of things or situations and react subconsciously when it happens. I believe most people see it as routine behavior is nothing more and nothing less. They live obliviously, either being in an emotional state of being okay, fine, content, or in a rut. And they don't crave for more, as they have been taught or conditioned that this is how life is meant to be. So you start your journey by growing up in a family of sorts. And as to whether you grew up being okay, content, happy or unhappy, struggling financially, emotionally, or not, that is how it was. And you as a child back then took what was given and lived your life the best you could. Of course, there would have been wants and needs that you had. Some of them might have been basic needs like food and shelter. And for some families, there was always a struggle to have those things to survive. And whilst for others, there was enough to get by. And yet for others, there were plenty. Now, when it comes to our emotional needs, that's another thing. Humans are very robust creatures. We somehow learn to cope from a young age, so we adjust our feelings and emotions as best as we can to fit the situation that we are given. Up to a certain point, our psyche is able to handle or tolerate quite a bit. And this also depends on our natural demeanor and what we were told as children and what we saw in our family as to how we should handle things. Notice I said should, which also equates to must. And we go along with it because when we were children, we didn't have much power to do what we actually wanted to do. So we tended to go with the flow. Whether we felt happy or not is another thing. If we were born into a loving family, we would have developed secure attachment and feelings of belonging, and we generally tend to cope pretty well. But if we didn't come from experiencing a loving family, if we experience a chaotic atmosphere on a daily basis, we would have watched how others in our family dealt with the situations as they came by. And we would either learn the same behaviors of coping and adopting the same attitudes and reactions, or we would have rebelled. However, remember that as children, there is only so much rebelling that we could show. If we were allowed to show this rebellious nature, we would have continued to do so, especially if we gained attention. And if acts of rebellion were not acceptable, then we had to come up with our own coping strategies to survive, as there would have been repercussions that we would have needed to handle and to go through, which we would have liked to avoid. There are all sorts of families where individuals come together to form a family from different backgrounds. These individuals are our parents. They come together with their own baggage in the form of their own unique experiences and join hands to live together and form families. Individuals becoming couples also join through various ways to create us. Hopefully for our sake, they form a strong union of love and respect for each other and intended to have us, meaning they made a conscious decision to have a baby that they both wanted to love and care for. However, unfortunately, a lot of us were not that lucky, as our mums could have been single mums who had us when they were not ready. They could have had us when they thought they were, but in actual fact they weren't ready, or they had to have us due to circumstances that they either didn't have a choice, like being raped, or they got pregnant and decided that it was wrong to abort, and they didn't want to give us away either due to their upbringing, religious beliefs, etc. Some of our fathers didn't stick around during pregnancy. Some may not even have known that we existed, while some did stick around because they felt guilty and felt forced to do the right thing or were coerced by their families. Some fathers already had other families, and we were just born out of an affair. Also, Another crucial aspect was a lot of us could have been born with mothers who were suffering from postnatal depression, and depending on how long it lasted and how they made up for it when the suffering stopped, it would have impacted on our attachment with our mothers, and this may or may not have certain consequences that will only be realized later in life. So by now, some of you would say that I'm stating the obvious, and you'd be right in saying that you already know those facts. But I'm going to go a step further to explain what happens to us when we become adults. And those things mentioned earlier, amongst other experiences, would contribute to shaping and molding us to create our personalities. And then we develop our identities and characteristics depending on our experiences before. Well, if you truly analyze all that I said about how our reality was shaped, and thus we then became who we are, further to this would inevitably lead us to how we see life, and it will result in how we will continue to live our lives. Now, from there onwards, whether we become fulfilled individuals or not is now dependent on what we do, and mainly on how self-aware we are about our existence as to what we want in our lives and don't. This is when we hopefully start to realize whether we want or need to change. Our realities, our circumstances, our daily situations, our life in general. Believe it or not, it does boil down to choices, however limited you think your choices are, and the courage and willingness to believe in other types of realities in order to make different choices. Moving on, now I want to bring to your awareness your current state of being. Do you at any time stop to analyze your thoughts and where they are coming from and why, and how your thoughts have become automatic? Or is this something that has never occurred to you? Are you sometimes only partially aware when something is not right, or when you may be triggered or challenged emotionally by a situation or someone else? If so, I would like to encourage you to try something new, or rather to invest some time to think about your thoughts. Meaning, I want you to think about your way of thinking and your type of thinking patterns. Why? It's mainly to develop the concept of self-awareness in order to get in touch with your real emotions and personal wants and needs, in order to be aware of what you are currently feeling in your life right now, and to challenge yourself to perceive things differently as to how you've always perceived them. More so, if deep inside you, you realize that you are unhappy and not really content with your life. The reason for this is that, believe it or not, it comes down to you and only you if you want change to happen. It's great when luck is around and you get something unexpected, but there is an energy that surrounds us and is within us, and it's that energy that attracts things into your life. To some, they believe it's called luck, but in reality it's not. Believe it or not, it can attract things that you desire or things you hate. It's learning about how you vibrate. Are you often living in a state of low vibration or high vibration, or somewhere in between depending on your circumstances? In other words, it's a frequency of living in a momentum of life force, and you'll know by asking yourself how you feel and being honest with the answer. At this point, you might be wondering, how do you start and what are the benefits of becoming self-aware? The benefits are ultimately what drives people to change or to respond to change in a healthier way. You may be glad to hear that benefits are aplenty. When you become self-aware, you are awake to your thoughts, and instead of just thinking your thoughts as you would usually do and reacting the same way, you would start by thinking a thought, then linking it emotionally as you are now conscious of your thoughts. And although you may initially react however you react, you must learn to continue to process, to see if that thought or thoughts serves you. What I mean by this is to see if the thought is beneficial to you in any way, or is it negative? And does it make you feel worse if you keep on thinking about it? It goes without saying that you can control whether you want to keep thinking along the same lines, especially if it's negative. Yes, I said control, and the word you, as you are the only one who can control you. Questions to ask yourself is, how would it affect you emotionally? Will it keep you from sleeping? Will it bring with it more harmful consequences if you keep thinking about it? And more importantly, is it that important that it needs all your effort to keep thinking about it repeatedly? I believe in walking the talk, and when I talk about something, it's something that I have been working on myself upon realization that I need to control my thinking, as my perceptions will develop into a thinking pattern which will ultimately affect me emotionally and then behaviorally to either do or not do something that will entail certain repercussions. So for me, in my personal journey, I felt that I needed to learn to be aware of what and how I'm thinking, especially if something negative happens. If I do react, whether it's physically seen by others or not, or if I'm thinking it inside me but not necessarily showing how I feel, there is still some kind of reaction. If it's emotional, I get either angry, hurt, or frustrated. And though I believe that it's important to accept and honor your feelings and go through the initial phase of feeling whatever it is that comes automatically after something happens, it's also important to become quickly aware of how that thought, which brings up those feelings, is affecting you mentally or emotionally. So I've learned to become self-aware, then to make a decision about the thought and what I will be doing about it as a result. Trust me, it's not easy. It does take a lot of conscious effort, and it's hard when you have always thought a certain way and reacted a certain way to fight the automatic emotions. But now that I am consciously aware of my thoughts, I can make a decision of whether to set a time frame to process the thought in order to make a decision that serves me. In doing this, I either choose whether I want to let it go or whether I should react. And if I do react, how should I react? What are the consequences, and will I be able to live with the results? That's dependent on what you ultimately want to achieve. For me, if it's important enough, I'll speak my truth and handle the repercussions. And if it's not, then I'll choose to let it go. I didn't always used to be like this. I would stew away and rethink and rehash the situation till I was satisfied. But now I'm different. I will not allow anyone or anything to control my mental state of mind. Although it's sometimes extremely hard, but once you get used to doing it, you will find more peace and tranquility within you and more power as you feel that you are now in total control and are not subjected to how you were treated or what happened, because ultimately you choose how to handle it. Taking time out, if you can, to reflect before you take action or no action is part of being self-aware. And it really serves you at the end, because you are no longer a puppet to your automatic thoughts, especially if they are not good for you. This is all good if you want to take steps to change yourself. And if you are still listening till now, you must seriously be considering change and wanting some kind of progression in your life. So do the hard work of becoming self-aware so that your precious time and effort is used productively and not destructively. Your life will begin to change, and people will also begin to see you differently as you will begin to react in a calmer and more rational way. So start your change now, as there is no better time than the present, as they say. If I have managed to provoke one person or a few people to reconsider your usual way of thinking to becoming more self-aware, I'm happy to have been of help and would have achieved my mission. So if you resonate with this talk, please like, share and subscribe, and help others to also see things from a different perspective than what they were used to. Thank you for listening.